Amanpreet Kaur was the picture of elegance, and Rajveer Singh was the groom every family dreamed of, but on their wedding day in Toronto, a single shocking revelation about the bride's fake degree shattered the celebrations, igniting a chain of betrayal, disappearance, and murder that no one saw coming. Amanpreet Kaur's life in Canada had always been about appearances. To her friends, she was the picture of success, a graceful young woman in her late 20s who had worked hard to build a stable life. She told everyone she had moved to Canada on a student visa, completed her master's degree in finance from a prestigious Toronto university, and secured a respectable job in a financial firm. Her social media was carefully curated, pictures in formal attire at what appeared to be networking events, coffee shop selfies with open laptops, and occasional shots of certificates framed on her apartment wall. In reality, the certificates were printed in a back alley shop in Punjab, and the photos at events were staged with borrowed passes. Amanpreet's real income came not from finance, but from working under the table at small businesses, always in cash, and occasionally helping others in the community arrange fake documents for a fee. When her parents in Punjab began pressuring her to marry, Amanpreet saw an opportunity to secure her future. She registered on a popular matrimonial website targeting Indian and Punjabi families living abroad. Her profile was polished and enticing: educated, cultured, family-oriented woman with a strong career in finance, seeking a life partner who values tradition and ambition. She uploaded professional photographs taken in an expensive lehenga she had rented for the shoot, making sure to include images that highlighted both her modern and traditional sides. Within weeks, her profile attracted dozens of interested families, but one stood out: the Singhs from Toronto. Rajveer Singh was the eldest son of a successful real estate businessman. He had been raised in Canada but carried the values of his Punjabi heritage proudly. His family was well connected, respected, and known for their generosity in the community. Rajveer himself had a quiet charm, not flashy but confident. His parents had been looking for an ideal match for years, and when they came across Amanpreet's profile, they felt they had finally found her. The fact that she had a Canadian master's degree and worked in finance made her seem perfect. Their first meeting was arranged at a family gathering in Toronto, where Amanpreet played her role flawlessly. She spoke warmly to the elders, laughed at Rajveer's light jokes, and subtly mentioned her busy life balancing work, deadlines, and wedding preparations. Rajveer was impressed, and his parents were even more so. They saw in her the potential to be not just a good wife, but also a partner who could add value to the family business with her supposed financial expertise. Over the following months, the families exchanged gifts, planned lavish pre-wedding events, and secured a grand banquet hall for the wedding day. Amanpreet's parents traveled from India, their pride swelling at the match their daughter had secured. The guest list grew into the hundreds, with prominent members of the Punjabi community marking their calendars for what was already being called one of the most anticipated weddings of the season. Beneath the surface, Amanpreet knew she was playing a dangerous game. The fake degree had worked for years, but the stakes were higher now. Marrying into such a high-profile family meant more people, more questions, and more eyes on her life. Still, she pushed the fear aside. If she could pull this off, she would secure wealth, stability, and a position of influence in Toronto's Punjabi elite. She told herself that people married for worse reasons all the time. This was just a little white lie. But deep down, she sensed that one wrong move could make the entire facade crumble, and the timing of that collapse would decide whether she would rise or fall. 2 days before the wedding, the atmosphere in Rajveer's family home was filled with excitement. Relatives from across Canada and India had arrived. The kitchen was alive with the scent of traditional dishes, and every room buzzed with laughter. Amanpreet had been staying at a nearby hotel with her parents, spending her days attending beauty appointments and finalizing the smallest details of the ceremony. Everything appeared perfect on the surface, but somewhere far away from the music and chatter, a quiet disruption was taking shape. Rajveer's cousin Harj, it was a reserved man in his early 30s, more comfortable with computers than with social gatherings. He had been tasked with managing some of the wedding's digital arrangements, including the guest list and photography contracts. That morning, as he checked his email, a subject line caught his attention, urgent about the bride. The sender's name was unfamiliar, and the message contained no formal greeting. It was short but unsettling. The anonymous writer claimed that Amanpreet's degree was forged and attached several scanned documents as proof. The email urged him to confirm the information before allowing the marriage to proceed, warning that it was not the first time Amanpreet had deceived someone. Harjit's first instinct was to dismiss it as malicious gossip. Weddings often attracted jealousy, and with a match as prominent as Rajveer and Amanpreet's, envy could easily drive someone to spread lies. Still, the detail in the message unsettled him. The forged degree certificate in the attachment looked convincing at first glance, but there were strange inconsistencies. The university seal seemed off, and the registrar's signature didn't match official documents he'd seen before. He stared at the email for several minutes, debating whether to ignore it or share it. When Rajveer came into the room to discuss seating arrangements, Harjit hesitated before mentioning the email casually, almost as if testing his cousin's reaction. Rajveer frowned, brushed it off at first, but the seed of doubt had been planted. He had always trusted Amanpreet, but the thought of a lie, this big gnawed at him. That night, when the celebrations wound down, Rajveer sat alone with his laptop, searching for the university's contact information. His email to the registrar's office was polite and straightforward, requesting verification of Amanpreet Kaur's degree. He included her student ID number from the certificate and the year of graduation. The reply came faster than he expected less than 4 hours later. It was brief, written in formal language, and it left no room for misunderstanding. The university had no record of a student by that name graduating in that year. Rajveer read the email 3 times, feeling a strange mix of anger, confusion, and disbelief. He closed the laptop and sat back, staring into the darkness of his room. Hundreds of guests had already arrived. Deposits had been paid for every venue and vendor, and his parents were overjoyed about the marriage. Confronting Amanpreet before the wedding could cause chaos, but letting the ceremony go forward while knowing the truth felt impossible. Rajveer made a decision. He would wait until the wedding day, in front of everyone, to expose her. It would be the ultimate betrayal, but it would also be the only way to protect himself and his family from a lifetime of deceit. The wedding morning began with golden sunlight spilling across the banquet hall's polished floors. The space had been transformed overnight. Fresh flowers lined the aisles. Crystal chandeliers glimmered above, and the scent of roses mixed with the aroma of hot chai being served to guests. Musicians tuned their instruments in a corner, while photographers darted from one group to another, capturing the laughter and colorful outfits. To the guests, it was the perfect beginning to a joyous day. To Rajveer, it was the calm before a storm he had chosen to unleash. He arrived early, dressed in a traditional cream sherwani, his face composed but his mind restless. The email from the university had replayed in his head all night, every word sharpening his sense of betrayal. He had not told his parents. He knew they would beg him to keep quiet, to avoid bringing shame to the family in front of hundreds of witnesses. But for Rajveer, the thought of starting a marriage under a foundation of lies was far worse than any scandal. Amanpreet entered the hall shortly before the ceremony began, draped in a red and gold bridal lehenga that shimmered under the lights. Her makeup was flawless, and she moved with an elegance that drew every eye in the room. Guests whispered compliments as she made her way to the ceremonial stage. She smiled warmly at Rajveer, unaware that the man standing beside her was preparing to dismantle her carefully built life in a matter of minutes. The priest began the sacred rituals, chanting prayers while family members looked on with folded hands. Rajveer went through the motions mechanically, his mind fixed on the small folded paper in his pocket, a printout of the university's email. His pulse quickened as the moment approached for them to exchange vows. He could feel the weight of the room pressing in, every guest expecting to witness a promise of lifelong devotion. When the priest paused for Rajveer's response, he took a deep breath and stepped forward. His voice was steady but carried a sharp edge that cut through the room's festive atmosphere. He told the guests that the wedding could not continue, that the woman beside him had lied about her education, and that her degree was nothing more than a forged document. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Someone dropped a tray of flower petals, and the soft thud seemed to echo in the silence. Rajveer pulled the paper from his pocket, holding it up for all to see. The words from the registrar were short but devastating. No record found of this individual. Guests leaned forward, murmuring in disbelief. Amanpreet stood frozen, her face pale beneath the layers of makeup. She glanced toward her parents, but her father had already risen from his seat, his expression dark with fury and humiliation. Arguments broke out among the guests. Some demanded an explanation, others insisted it was a misunderstanding. The priest quietly stepped back, sensing that the ceremony had transformed into something far more dangerous. Cameras kept rolling, recording every second of the unraveling. Amanpreet's hands trembled, and for the first time her confident facade cracked. She looked as though she might speak, but the noise of the crowd swallowed her voice. Rajveer didn't wait for her to defend herself. He turned away, leaving her standing on the stage as the wedding decorations and flowers seemed to lose their beauty under the weight of the scandal. The perfect day was over, and in its place stood the first public fracture in a story that was about to spiral into something far darker. That night, the city's bright summer lights seemed muted against the shadow of the day's events. The wedding guests had scattered hours earlier, some still whispering about what had happened, others leaving in awkward silence. Amanpreet had retreated to the hotel where she was staying with her parents, but the atmosphere there was tense and suffocating. Her father barely spoke to her, his face locked in a grim expression, while her mother moved silently through the room, avoiding eye contact. Amanpreet kept to herself, replaying the moment Rajveer had read the email aloud in front of everyone. The sting of humiliation burned deeper than she had anticipated. It wasn't just the broken engagement. It was the knowledge that her carefully crafted life in Canada had been exposed in front of the very community whose respect she had fought to earn. Around 11 p.m., the hotel's night staff noticed Amanpreet leaving through a side entrance. She was dressed in plain jeans and a hoodie, carrying a small black suitcase. She moved quickly, avoiding the lobby where security cameras were most obvious. Footage later reviewed by investigators showed her glancing over her shoulder twice before disappearing into the dimly lit parking lot. No one saw her hail a cab or get into a car. By the next morning, her parents reported her missing to the police, though their tone suggested more frustration than concern. They told officers she had likely gone to stay with a friend, needing time to cool off after the public embarrassment. But when calls to her phone went unanswered and her friends claimed they had no idea where she was, the situation began to take a darker turn. 3 days later, a jogger in a wooded area near Mississauga made a grim discovery. Lying partially hidden by overgrown bushes was the body of a woman in a crumpled position. Her clothes were disheveled, her hands scraped, and a faint bruise marked her neck. Identification found in her handbag confirmed it was Amanpreet. The suitcase she had carried from the hotel was nowhere in sight. Inside her handbag, police found a Canadian passport, a one-way ticket to India dated for the following week, and a small flash drive. The drive contained dozens of scanned passports, degree certificates, and marriage certificates, all forged. The documents painted a disturbing picture. Amanpreet had been involved in multiple fraudulent marriages, each ending shortly after she gained financial benefits or immigration advantages. In some cases, the men had been from rural parts of India desperate to settle in Canada, paying large sums for her to be their ticket in. In others, she had positioned herself as the beneficiary, gaining property or cash before vanishing from their lives. The discovery shifted the tone of the investigation entirely. This was no longer just a case of a bride fleeing humiliation. Amanpreet's death had the markings of something deliberate, a silencing of someone who knew too much. Detectives began tracing her connections, focusing on anyone linked to the forged documents. As her secret life unfolded piece by piece, it became clear she had been walking a dangerous line for years, and someone had decided it was time to make sure she never crossed it again. The investigation into Amanpreet's murder quickly drew the attention of multiple law enforcement agencies. Her flash drive was a gold mine of evidence, revealing a complex web of forged degree operations, sham marriages, and immigration fraud. The documents linked her to at least 4 men who had entered Canada under suspicious circumstances, each paying large sums for her involvement. Some of those marriages had ended quietly, others in bitter disputes, but in every case, Amanpreet had walked away with money, property, or both. The pattern was too consistent to be coincidence. Detectives began interviewing the men connected to her past, but one name kept surfacing: Harmeet Gill. He was a quiet, seemingly unremarkable man in his mid-40s who ran a small travel agency in Brampton. Beneath the surface, however, Harmeet was far from ordinary. Police records linked him to a suspected network that specialized in producing forged educational credentials and falsified immigration paperwork. It was Harmeet who had arranged Amanpreet's fake degree years earlier, and it was Harmeet who had introduced her to several of the men she later married for money. Through financial records, investigators discovered that Amanpreet had recently demanded a larger cut from the profits of the operations she helped facilitate. She had also threatened to expose Harmeet's network after the wedding humiliation ruined her public standing. For someone like Harmeet, whose entire business depended on secrecy, such a threat was intolerable. Phone records placed Harmeet's cell near the wooded area in Mississauga on the night Amanpreet vanished. Surveillance cameras from a nearby gas station showed a dark sedan resembling his pulling into the area less than an hour after Amanpreet was seen leaving the hotel. A witness came forward claiming they had seen a man matching Harmeet's description walking along the road near the crime scene, looking nervous. These were still circumstantial details, but the picture was coming together. When detectives confronted Harmeet, he maintained his innocence, insisting he hadn't seen Amanpreet in months. But forensic analysis of the flash drive revealed several files last modified by a computer registered to his travel agency. One file contained a spreadsheet tracking payments from clients, and Amanpreet's name appeared multiple times, alongside amounts that totaled more than $60 in the last year alone. Under pressure, one of Harmeet's associates finally confessed. According to his statement, Harmeet had arranged to meet Amanpreet that night under the pretense of helping her leave the country quickly. Instead, an argument broke out over money, and Harmeet strangled her in a fit of rage, panicking afterward and dumping her body in the woods. Harmeet was arrested within days, charged with first-degree murder, conspiracy to commit immigration fraud, and multiple counts of forgery. The trial that followed exposed not only the details of Amanpreet's life, but also a wider criminal operation that had exploited vulnerable immigrants for years. Rajveer watched the proceedings from a distance, his role in exposing Amanpreet both praised and whispered about within the community. For him, the wedding day had been the end of a love story, but for Amanpreet, it had been the beginning of a deadly countdown. The truth had not only destroyed her carefully built world, it had also signed her death warrant.